We are live. Hey, everybody. I am Haley Gray, and this is my good friend, Victoria Bentley. And we're excited to be with you here tonight. And tonight we're going to talk about leaders, managers, employers, bosses, and being a boss.
Being a good boss.
Being a good boss. Yeah. So, and this is kind of one of the interesting thing, right? Because to me, being a good boss is a really tricky thing. And this is something that I have not always done super well, and sometimes I do extremely well. And here is the challenge. When I worked in corporate, I was an exceptional boss because I knew exactly what my clients were going to do, or my interns were going to do, my employees. And we had a very clear chain of command, and it was easy. You know, it was a relatively limited skill set. We're all software engineers, and we were working on a single set of platforms. And yeah, we had some different responsibilities, but you know, that to me kind of got thrown out the wall when I went out and had my own business, because suddenly we're responsible for everything, you know, operations, delivering services, you know, all of the stuff. And it was really tricky because you have to define workloads and you have to define responsibilities. And hey, Kelly, good to see you. Welcome.
Hi, Kelly.
So it got really much harder because one of the tricky things is, you know, when I was working in corporate, I didn't have to decide if there was enough work for people. There always was, right? There's plenty coming down. And if my management could justify another position, there kind of by definition was. But then when I got out on my own, there was like all of these random, you know, job responsibilities and whatnot. And I would hire people. And I've run into this really kind of fascinating phenomenon that happens as a boss. And I'm going to guess that you've seen this too, where people will make it seem like their job keeps them 100% busy, 1,000% of the time. And even if they have to take all of their peas and push them out all across the plate and spread them out, rather than gathering them up into a big pile, they're going to push the peas and spread them out.
But there's a parenthesis after that, which is because I'm so important.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's tricky, right? Because we're trying to hire out, you know, the things in our business that really are not as good of a use of our time. And sometimes we're okay at doing them. Like, I'm actually a really good website designer. I can build websites really fast. Software engineer with 25 years of experience. The problem is, if I'm the one managing the website projects and I'm doing all of the website projects, then I'm not out getting more clients. And I'm not dealing with the problem cases, right? So it's impossible to scale the business. So
you got to divide and conquer.
So you have to divide and conquer, right? But I've learned that it almost doesn't matter. You know, most people I hire are not going to be as fast or as efficient at getting stuff done.
Or have as much of a dog in the hunt.
Precisely.
Because when the whistle blows, I mean, the reality is they're going to get a paycheck whether the client pays you or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
a tough place, right? And it really is a tough place. And I've been there, you know, with people on my team who are getting a paycheck whether the client is paying or not, or whether we lose or they lose me a client or not.
Yeah, have a surly employee who ticks off a client. You still have to pay the surly employee, and now you don't have the income source to pay her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen.
Yeah, ditto.
So,
and it seems to me, especially in entrepreneurship, especially small shop entrepreneurship, there can be a lot of resentment
Mm-hmm.
towards you as the boss, especially as a female boss, of, well, why are you telling me what to do?
Well, or I see how much money is coming in. I deserve a bigger chunk of that,
Hmm.
right? And
No
I'm
understanding about the tax portions that you're paying and
or
choose
the
take
overhead or the insurance or the
or the
software costs or
MBA.
everything else.
Yeah. And it's hard to have the conversation with a client that, or with an employee that says, I'm sorry, you're not sharp enough to realize it's not as simple as it looks. It might look simple because I'm working really hard. And you might not care because you don't have to pay all these bills, but it matters to me because the lights only stay on if I do what I have to do. And oh, by the way, I own the building. And oh, by the way, I own the computer. And oh, by the way, I pay the taxes. Da, 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 da. And
Right. And then the amount that I actually walk home with at the end of the day with my paycheck, is a fraction of that because you've got the gas, the rent, the paycheck, the insurance, the computer, the Wi-Fi, all of the expenses that go into having a business.
so, how do we, knowing all of that,
Mm-hmm.
how do we become better bosses? And how do we politely convey that information to
Mm-hmm.
employees that this isn't as simple as showing up? And I
Right.
wasn't here when I was 20 years old. And oh, gee, I did without so that I could get this degree, or, ate Kraft dinner for 6 years because I couldn't afford anything else. Hello,
Oh
ramen,
my gosh.
and
Yeah. Well,
um,
and I've had that too, where
mhm.
I've done some pretty crappy stuff to make ends meet.
Yeah, but you've always done it too. I mean, you've been the queen of the side hustle,
Mm-hmm.
and you did it
Because I've had to.
because you had to, because you have 4 kids and they needed to be educated, and your husband has a good job. I get it, but you still have 4 kids, and somebody needs braces and somebody needs whatever, and you got to do what you got to do.
And somebody's been bopping in and out of the hospital for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
It'll be 5 years in 2 weeks. And that, make no mistake, has had a massive impact on my business. I mean, I have 13 hours worth of calls that are going to happen in the next week and a half.
And you have to be able to rely on other people so that you can take care of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And they have
Yeah.
to understand it, because they're going to say, well, how come I can't take time off to do family things?
Well, you can take time off to do family things. You just have to understand that you may not be getting paid to take time off to do family things. Because I'm not getting paid when I take time off to do family things.
Mhm.
When I'm going to go pick up my son from boarding school, we have to be there at 0700 on Friday morning. So we're going to go up on Wednesday night so we don't have to leave here at 0300 on Friday morning.
Mm.
Mm,
And I was in that neck of the woods at the end.
yeah. Small
And
world.
it was warm. I thought I was in Florida. It was so warm on
Mm-hmm.
Friday. It felt wonderful. And I got back to Pennsylvania and it felt very cold.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of rain with that hurricane. And I think Chatham, Danville area had 9 inches of rain from the
Mm-hmm.
hurricane, and roads were closed and things were pretty
Yeah,
bad.
my older son was supposed to go camping with Boy Scouts this weekend, and it got canceled because the campground was underwater.
Yeah.
So that didn't happen. But, this whole boss and leadership thing is really tricky. I mean, I've hired people in my business, just a VA to do a few hours here and there. And it's really hard to split stuff off sometimes and train people adequately and make sure that they know what they're doing. I think one of the hardest
So they
parts,
don't damage your business.
is onboarding, because we're already busy. And if we weren't busy, we wouldn't have hired you in the first place. So I'm already at that breaking point. Anybody ever been there? Let me know. And I'm already at that crazy breaking point, and I already want to pull my hair out. And okay, now I'm trying to hire somebody, whether it's a VA or whatever, and onboard them. And I'm just like, I don't have time to give you tasks, and I don't have time to really onboard you, and I don't have, 5 hours to train you. Oops. And y'all, and this is like doing this real time in my business. I had to let somebody go from my team about a week and a half ago, and I'm onboarding another project manager onto my team. Well, while we are onboarding her, we're working on a lot of the business processes in the background and doing all this and training and picking up all of the dropped pieces. So it's a challenge. You're coming in and flying without knowing exactly what's going on, and that's another challenge. Like when you're a boss, you're ultimately responsible. When you're the business owner, it all comes to you.
And that's what a really high-end boss is. They are the front line. If the project has gone wrong, it is our fault, and we will take care of it. And yeah, you might have had somebody who, overdosed on cocaine in the back room. It's still our fault, because we are the ones who made the deal with the customer, and we're the ones who gave our word that the work would be done.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with, Sally Sue in the background passing out, whatever, I really did.
It's not the client's problem.
No, it's not. And don't make it the client's problem. To be a good boss is to do the work that they have hired you to do, and do it extremely well. And
yeah, and it's just like, it's not my client's fault. Like, seriously. And this is a true story. So please don't think I'm exaggerating. Victoria can actually corroborate this. It is not my client's fault that my daughter was released from the hospital fully psychotic and still homicidal and suicidal. And yes, I did say homicidal, with plans to kill us.
To kill the whole family.
To kill the entire family. And, I'm trying to get enough documentation to get her rehospitalized. But in the meantime, I'm trying to frantically run a business and manage clients and employees. It is not the client's problem. Client doesn't care.
And let's remember that time in the middle of some of this last year, with an employee who was undermining you to clients because he wanted to start his own business. And no, she doesn't know what she's doing, but I do. Come with me. And that's also part of what we have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Being a good boss takes patience. It takes understanding, and it takes a really firm hand sometimes.
Oh, and sometimes you have to put on your flame retardant big girl panties. Yes, I just said flame retardant big girl panties. I'll put it up in the banner.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think that's a keeper. I'm going to write it down. Yeah, that's really good.
Right? Do you have a pair of flame retardant big girl panties? Like, seriously. And I mean, I think that's a lot of like being a boss, being a business owner. This is going to be one of those, I'm sorry guys, I have to write this down, but like, seriously, I have felt a lot of times like, I'm going in and I'm dealing with a client who's irate. And as my husband said, the higher up you are in business, the more time you spend apologizing. So you need that pair of,
and the humility to apologize, as opposed to the hubris to sink your ship.
Well, and that is an interesting comment, right? Because yes, it is that willingness to apologize and own it. I might or might not have said recently, we all in this business own each client situation 100%. we don't sit here and point fingers. We don't sit here and blame each other.
Has
And
to
if
be
you can't do that, I'll be happy to accept your resignation right now.
good for you.
Because we don't, you have to own it. And you can't pass the buck. And you can't blame other people. And if somebody else is not doing their job, I mean, it's okay to say, well, they didn't do their job, but we're figuring it out.
You can't be a people pleaser either. If you're a people pleaser, it's going to be a mess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People pleasing is tough. And I am naturally a people pleaser.
I think Southern women are trained to be.
Mhm.
You know, when you want to say drop dead, you say that's nice, you know, or
Bless your heart. Well, isn't that nice?
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but a lot of this whole like business owner thing, manager, boss, it's tough stuff.
It is. And I'm reminded of my favorite Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry comment, which is a man's got to know his limitations. That applies to a woman's got to know her limitations. And I know what I can and cannot do and why I need to hire someone. And I need to know where the boundaries are and the limitations are.
Mm-hmm.
I am wandering now into your job territory. And I need to understand the boundaries of my job. Not saying, I'm sorry, I'm not doing it, not my job, but I need to understand what I have been hired to do, what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and what I can bring to the party.
Right.
And otherwise, I am not of any use to you. And it's not that I won't help out with the baking of the cookies on Saturday, but you've hired me to do X, Y, and Z. That's where
That's where you need to spend your time.
Well, and that's where things are most smooth, that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that you have a drama-free workplace and chaos-free work. You know, the other quote is, when in danger, when in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout, which has often been a mantra in a busy law office with crazy clients and crazy judges and crazy lawyers. And
so when in danger, scream and shout.
when in danger, when in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout. And, you know, you want to be cool. And that's a real easy one for me to divert to in times of stress.
Yeah, that one's really easy to fall into. Like as a business owner, as anytime I'm stressed.
And I always admired those really cool customers. Like, yeah, right engine quit. Think we don't have enough. Oh, wait, the wing's starting to dip. We're going into a spin. Yep. Yeah, a little more rudder. Yeah, call Mayday. Yeah. And I, you know, and I'm thinking we're all going to die here, right? And it never serves you well as a boss. Never serves you well if you forget to fly the plane, right? That if you forget why you're there, which is to fly the plane, everything you're going to auger in. But if you do that job and focus on doing that job, which is paying the bills and bringing in the new business and delegate, right? Yeah, first fly the plane.
Yeah, totally.
I'm changing the subject. I'm talking about something that I talked to you about that happened to me on Saturday night. And ladies, and gentlemen, this is apropos of nothing we're talking about. But I had a gift of an experience. And I was staying with my family, and we had a dinner party out, and we came home, and you know, by 10:30 we had all gone to bed. And at 11 o'clock, I heard a very quiet on the window of my bedroom. It was a very light tapping, like Are you awake? It was the light tapping you would hope was your 16-year-old boyfriend saying, can you come out and talk? It was one of those kind of things. And I was in the middle of nowhere. I was down a country lane, down a dirt driveway. I mean, I was in the middle of BFE. And I got up and I said to my nephew XYZ, we have a big problem. We have an intruder. And my husband was already asleep. And he was still sleeping as I go bounding out of bed and out the door. God bless people who can sleep well like that. Anyway, nephew and I saddled up, loaded up, guns blazing out the door. And when I went out the door, I realized there was a possibility I would not be coming back in.
Mm-hmm.
And I also realized my nephew and I were saying we kibitzed after the event. But I realized I would do whatever I had to do to protect my family and the children in the house. I would do whatever it took. Smith & Wesson, baseball
Yeah.
bat,
Whatever it took.
gun, whatever it took.
Yeah.
And so I went flying, back surgery, 2 knees. I went flying out the door.
Fearlessly.
And it was interesting when the police came, they said that, yes, it was outside our bedroom window. And yes, it was the footprints of 2 adult men, and told me the shoe sizes. So they probably saw us fly out the door and headed off into the woods. But I realized something. I realized that God was with me no matter what. And that I realized I was able to do whatever needed to be done. And that was of great comfort to me, that if I get in a fix,
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to take care of it. And that's part of being a good boss too. That all of us adults are in our own homes too. My husband's a boss, I'm a boss. You know what I mean? You do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so sound asleep that, we just left running out the door saying call 911, and that was, and then everybody got up. But I think being a good boss is knowing your limitations. And one of the adults in the house said, I don't think I can handle a gun. That's okay. That's fine. You know your limitations. Let's go. And
Right. And to
you
be
do-
clear, I feel like this kind of goes without saying. We don't point guns at people if we don't intend to shoot them.
Oh, of course not.
Well, I mean, sometimes people kind of like use them to threaten or
that's crazy. That's how you get killed.
exactly.
A gun gets pointed only if one intends to shoot it at one.
Intentional, yes.
Yeah.
If there is intent, there should not be.
Yeah. There's no warning shot. There's no cease and desist. You know what I mean? This is serious business, and
Mhm.
you have to know. You have to know. And like I said, one person in the house was not comfortable with the gun, and I thought, that's okay. You don't have to be today. You can think about it tomorrow, knowing what has happened, if you
Mhm.
want to become comfortable with that.
Mhm.
But we live in strange times, and you never know if that's some high school kid who wants to steal the handbag you see sitting on the dining room table, or if it's Truman Capote in cold blood, and you just don't know anymore. And I think part of this, and in talking to someone, is that there aren't any consequences anymore for bad behavior. That the stuff that used to be, you commit a crime, you do the time, just doesn't seem to be happening the way it used to.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends on where you are.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
I think it does. I mean, because here I see prosecution for stuff like that.
Well,
Like, if somebody commits a crime.
you commit a crime with a gun and so forth. Yeah. But I think about it, I look at the sentencing guidelines, and they're very different from the way things once were. And there are a lot of do-overs. There are a lot of get out of jail free cards going on,
Mhm.
and so you have to be prepared that people think they don't have anything to lose. Often,
Well, and the other thing too, I mean, not to put too fine of a point on it, is that, you know, the way we take care of most of our mentally ill is in the prison system.
is to warehouse them. Yeah.
In the prison system, right? So
Yes.
they're
Instead
either
of getting
homeless,
medical treatment.
they're not getting adequate medical treatment, they're not being treated correctly, and you know, they don't know right from wrong in a lot of cases. And
some do-gooder decided that state hospitals and the like were cruel and unusual, and certainly they were many years ago.
but right, we've cut funding to the point now to where it's unrecognizable. Well, the only alternative we have is putting people in prison for long periods of time, to the tune of $30,000 a month, and that's how we're treating our mentally ill. And I think that we're seeing a non-trivial percentage of crimes being committed by the mentally ill and people who have severe mental illness. And I mean, there's clear documentation of this as well. And it's hard because
they treated your daughter. They said, let's get her in an apartment without supervision. It was either black or white. It was no gray. It was no, well, let's try a group home for a while and see how that goes. And if that goes well, then we'll try. You know what I mean? It was just like, oh, well, she doesn't.
We're going to discharge her from the state psychiatric hospital. She's never lived alone in her life. The last time she was in our house, she tried to burn it down. And yeah, so I mean, we talk about consequences, but I also think that, we have to go back and point to, there's a lot of people who we don't have the right consequences, in our society. And I think that we've also got a lot of people with a lot of mental illness that are wandering around amongst us committing crimes. I know somebody whose son is 21 who has schizophrenia, who was sentenced to life in prison in Florida.
And where was
follow the money?
Not showing that, this is somebody who has schizophrenia and is not competent to stand trial. What's up with that?
Follow the money.
How do you mean in this case?
So the funding, there is funding for prison systems and, a lot of incentive to incarcerate people in certain states. That's where the money is. There's not money to put people into group homes or into psychiatric units. Where are we incentivizing people to be put? It's just.
You look at a lot of the.
And I'm not saying that everybody who commits a crime is mentally ill, but there is a surprisingly large number.
Well, we could start maybe with Bernie Madoff.
He's a psychopath.
But I think jail's okay for him.
I think jail is a lovely place for Bernie Madoff.
The thing of it is that if someone would deem you all better now, you could get out. And I don't think I want him out.
No. Oh, I mean, the extent of his crimes, right? I actually was reading an interesting book recently called Talking to Strangers. And it actually brings up the whole Bernie Madoff thing. It also brings up discussions about Hitler and the whole Amanda Knox trial in Italy. And it talks about how, and I'm not all the way through the book, but it talks about how we as humans do a very poor job of interpreting intent and body language. And how a lot of times, the people that we would expect to be better at judging it, like judges, do worse than a computer model.
No surprise there.
No surprise. And, and how poorly we read intent. And, it talks about Chamberlain's meetings with Hitler before World War II and how he completely mistook Hitler's intentions because Hitler seemed to be so open and, he was obviously lying.
A clever psychopath.
A very clever psychopath, but
And
his body language and his facial expressions seemed to indicate that he was very open.
Amanda Knox, Madoff, and who was the third name?
Hitler. There's a bunch of other ones too. It talks about, CIA operatives. It talks about a bunch of things that I think are particularly that are, it talks about how inadequate we are as humans at reading intent and facial expressions with one another, and how, even our,
You want to believe too.
well, yeah, and how a lot of it's very cultural too. Facial expressions are extremely cultural. That when they show particular facial expressions to other cultures, they don't always translate.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So I recommend the book, Talking to Strangers.
All right, I wrote it down.
Mm-hmm.
That's Amanda Knox. That was just
Right, and she was, they assumed what they were reading of her behavior, and her body language and her demeanor didn't match somebody who was remorseful, but of course she hadn't killed her roommate. And she was distraught, but she wasn't displaying the appropriate distraught behaviors according to the Italian authorities, so they judged her to be guilty. And the Italian media went berserk because she went out shopping for underwear. Well, of course, because her whole apartment had just been declared a crime scene, so she had no clothing. But how dare she go shopping for red underwear?
When I was in law school and we did a trial advocacy program in the summer, and we would be given a case and we would have to prepare the case and do everything the lawyer would have to do, or the lawyer that we were soon to be. And the law school would hire people from town. They would put ads in newspapers. That shows you how old I am. They put ads in newspapers, come be a juror for, whatever dollar an hour. And we would make our case before the jury. And then the one thing that we will never be able to do again is to listen in on the jurors' deliberation. And that was the most amazing thing, how they got it wrong every time. From, I didn't think she looked good in that blue suit, to, I think green would have been a better color for her, to making decisions on guilt or innocence on things that weren't even in the case. Everything from, I don't like the way the defendant looks. I don't like
her facial expression. Her hair is too gray.
She's trying to look young and hip or something. And just things that had nothing to do with the case completely distracted them from listening to this. And I'll give one more aside of this. There used to be, I think it was called Hechinger's. Hechinger's was a Lowe's, Home Depot kind of place. And the chairman of Hechinger's, I believe it was the chairman, was chosen as a jury foreman. Both sides of the case decided they needed very educated people with high degrees and complex knowledge of business, because the case was an insurance case. The case was, I'm just making up names because I don't remember it, that, okay, Blue Cross was one and Aetna was another, and I'm making that up, don't know. And the territory had to be divided in through Kansas, and where was the border going to be, and which part belonged to Aetna and which part, and I think it was for a state. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They hired they went through 55,000 jurors to get this panel of
Mhm.
9 and 3 alternates, and this guy was the foreman.
Mm.
And after months and months and months and gazillions of dollars, they came up with their own solution. They did not do what was asked, which was divide the state of Kansas. They decided the western boundary could go into southern Colorado, and the eastern boundary could include part of Nebraska because it would make it fairer with the Democrat. It was like all this shit that nobody asked them. And at the end of this, after months and months and months of the trial, the judge said, I'm throwing it all out. I'm declaring a mistrial. And we're going to take the next 9 jurors who walk through the door, and that's going to be your jury panel. And we're going to get it done. And they did. And they didn't do any worse than the PhDs, MBAs, CEOs, whatever. They all took it on as a project. They looked at it from their own perspective. And
Yeah.
I don't know how you learn not to see through your own lens. I don't know how you divorce yourself from that. I know that, there's empathy and whatever. But when you're seeing someone, you're looking at it through your own oeuvre, I guess is your own worldview, your own style.
Yeah, your own perspective.
And it makes it very hard to anyway, as
Mhm.
part of being a good boss, you have to look at it through more than your perspective.
Yes.
And you have to see how maybe that boss is walking in their that employee is walking in their shoes, and what is important to them, that you think you're giving them a great gift when really what they'd really like is an hour's lunch on Friday instead of whatever.
Mm.
And to be able to order pizza in and hang out with their friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, so being a good boss is listening.
Well, and you know, you are a practicing attorney and you had a family law practice.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, you know, I remember one of your comments about how you would instruct your clients to dress for court.
Hmm. Hmm.
But why were you so specific with those instructions? How did that influence the outcomes for trials?
Well, here's a simple example of this. The county that I live in, actually, I practiced in 3 counties, and all of them are extremely conservative counties, and they're older
Mhm.
counties. And the judges are often older men,
Mhm.
and you're trying to get custody of your children. And part of the reason you're getting divorced and fighting for custody is because you left your husband for his best friend. So somewhere in the back of a judge's mind, he's saying, she's a slut, right? Something like that.
Mhm.
I want you to dress in a way that doesn't distract from your case, that it doesn't confirm or deny.
Mhm.
What was the one?
Epiday?
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, a t-shirt. A guy came in. Oh, he literally came to court with a t-shirt that said, I'm a bad mother on it. Now, why do you need to be told when we're trying to get a judge to find for you? Why would he want to find for someone who is a bad mother? Right?
Bad mother bleeper.
Right. And the fact that I have to tell you this tells me, yes, you might be, but you're also a dumb mother
Mother
bleeper,
bleeper.
and perhaps don't deserve custody of the children if you don't know how to behave in a courtroom, that you don't have the sense of decorum. But I would always encourage people to dress in a way that is simple and appropriate and doesn't distract from their case. So you don't want to be wearing low cut things, or shorty shorts, or skimpy skirts, or or t-shirts if you're a guy, and they might not own a suit. That's okay.
Right.
You can wear a shirt with a tie, or you can wear a pair of khaki pants that you got at the store for $20. You don't
Right.
have to spend a lot of money, but you have to look responsible and respectable. And you don't want any more bad judgment coming your way. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, and that's part of understanding the lens with which you're being perceived.
and a lot of people say, but that's not fair. And fair is where you get cotton candy. Life is
Fair comes once a year in the fall.
yeah, yeah. And people are going to judge you. People are
Mhm.
going to call it the way they see it through their perspective. So they're going to talk about you anyway.
Well, and people may perceive you to be more of a boss or more of a leader based on random things. I mean, I will tell you part of my funny perspective, not so funny perspective, is that I've shared that I've lost 175 pounds. My face has changed dramatically. So I look like I've lost more from the shoulders up, or, the waist up, than I do from the waist down. So I look extremely thin in my face. And it's very amusing to me because suddenly I've become smarter. And suddenly it's like, yes. And suddenly I am perceived as knowing more about my craft and being more persuasive. And because people are just judging. And a lot of it is the weight loss.
And people do judge. And I think we have to judge. We have to judge.
And the way people talk to me is totally different, so it's very interesting to me to see how I get treated, how, depending on how I'm dressed on a particular day, and how people react to me based on my makeup status or my hair status or eyebrow status or whatever. And you're laughing at the eyebrow thing. I just had my eyebrows microbladed, so y'all can laugh because they're kind of red right now.
They look really good. They really look good. I think we have to judge.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go bounding out of that house the other day because I hadn't judged. I was bounding out of the house I had judged.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to sum up a lot of things very quickly. And I think that's what saves our lives sometimes. You don't open the door to certain people because of the way they look. You might be right, you might be wrong, but are you willing to take that chance?
Right. Totally.
The homeless guy, and I put it in parentheses because I don't know if he's homeless, because whenever he's under the bridge at the busiest intersection in town when I go in and out of my office.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been stuck as the first car at that light, and it's a long light because they're coming off the highway, whatever. And I notice in his very nice backpack, he always has a couple of cartons of Marlboros, and he has a laptop computer and an iPhone. I am homeless. I need food. Now, he's got an iPad, and he's got, carton of Marlboros is $100 where I live. That's something wasn't ringing true, and I had to make that judgment, and I chose not to give money.
Mm-hmm.
You make these judgments.
We all do.
Right. I think it's interesting that people think you're smarter.
The reactions are entertaining, to say the least.
They're not funny.
Mm.
Well, there are all kinds of studies on hair color too.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, totally.
I always have fun when we do this.
Yeah, me too. This has been fun tonight. I appreciate you coming on with me and doing this and having these talks, and let's talk to strangers.
Yeah, and I look forward to reading that book.
Yeah, it's an awesome book. Y'all take care.
Good night, everybody, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.